I'm Jim Wallis, a friend of Christian Aid. You're one of my favorite organizations here in the UK, and I'm glad to be addressing the Christian Aid Staff Conference. The church sometimes has been too safe at its own detriment. Somebody told me the other day they got a job in a Christian agency. They said they were going to pick between the safe choice, the risky choice, and the dangerous choice, and he was the dangerous choice, and they chose him. That's great news. It's about time that we were living a bit more dangerously as people of faith. And so sometimes I think we're going to have to be the ones, put ourselves in the places where people don't have answers, and find the answers by Gandhi used to talk about experimenting with the truth, and I love that. We need to experiment with the gospel. What does the gospel mean in the most difficult circumstances in the world? That's where our faith has to be lived out, but almost learned anew and afresh. Well, I think Christian Aid is a wonderful agency. I hear that term a lot. It's a good term, and you are. But I think you're at your best when you're more like a movement. And Christian Aid has been that. It's been it helped spark Jubilee 2000 and make poverty history. And we are best when we're functioning as a movement, thinking movement, not just thinking organizations. Christians at the beginning were a movement. We were a movement. And when we've been powerful and strong, we've gone back to being a movement again. It's time, I think, for Christians to become a movement again. The issues we face, the challenges are like mountains. They're like huge mountains to move. 3 billion people living on $2 a day. Climate change happening faster than we ever thought it would. Well, the Bible says you got faith the size of the grain of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. So in our Christian history, we've got movements of revival and renewal that really were mountain-moving businesses, and they change things. So it's time for us to become a movement again. The churches are not just organizations. We've got to understand ourselves again as a movement. In the civil rights struggle, there was SCLC and SNCC and CORE and the NAACP, all the organizations, but there was a civil rights movement that transcended all the organizations. I think the new altar call, if you will, I'm a preacher, an evangelical preacher, and I do altar calls. I call people to commit themselves and come down the aisle and make a commitment right there. Charles Finney, the Billy Graham of the Second Great Awakening in the U.S., used the altar call to sign people up for the anti-slavery campaign. That's what I use altar calls for. And maybe the altar call for a new revival, what I call a justice revival, is going to be the words of the campaign that you helped to foster just a few short years ago, Make Poverty History. Maybe the altar call of a new justice revival. That the next generation is ready to step up and make a difference and make their faith felt. And someone has to call them to something. We've called young people, we've asked for the edges of their lives, and they want someone to ask them for everything. Their gifts, their talents, their vocation, their energy, their time. They want their lives to make a difference. The next generation, I think, could provide a tipping point on issues like global poverty and climate change and the resolution of these endless conflicts in a whole different way than our habit of war. I think a new generation is ready to take their place, and we have to make room for them to be not just future leaders, but emerging leaders right now. Half our crowds are under 30 every time we go out to speak. Half of them under 25. I've got 11, 12-year-olds asking how they're going to change the world. My own son, he's 10, and he thinks about these things all the time. He was praying the other day, and out of the blue, we hadn't been talking about this, but at night during prayers, Luke, my 10-year-old, just said, "Dear God, I pray those children won't die again tomorrow because of hunger and disease. But that's unlikely. So, dear God, I pray that it would be their best day ever. But it won't. So Dear God, help us to stop this from happening. And that's the prayer. Dear God, help us to stop this from happening. That's what Christian Aid does, and I'm grateful for all that you do.